In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, many African countries struggle to recover from the economic fallout. Businesses collapsed as restrictions halted demand for services, while workers lost their jobs as some companies tried to salvage what was left of their finances. As the strains of the virus began to whittle and humanity slowly found solutions to curb the virus spread, one solution was proposed to rebuild battered economies, and that was improving and strengthening the instruments and systems of taxation. Believing that as businesses began to gradually reopen for activities, effective tax revenue collection could help governments fund economic revivals. Liberia is an example of a country that actually did that and took that approach. Now, Liberia has long struggled with economic challenges, including high levels of poverty and issues with revenue collection. However, in recent years, the government has been working to strengthen its tax system in order to increase revenue and stimulate economic growth. The COVID-19 pandemic was one of the things that debilitated Liberia's economy, as it were. And now recently we've had interviews with the local media where Liberia's Minister of Finance, that is Samuel Tia, discussed the country's experience with taxation and its potential for post-pandemic recovery. And that is why this morning we have someone who will be shedding more light to the issue of how to use taxation, as it were, to stimulate and revive battered economies. And this morning, we have Darlington Tyler, who's the Commissioner, Domestic Taxes, Liberia Revenue Authority. Thank you so much, Darlington, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for affording us the opportunity to appear on your show this morning.
All right. It's nice to have you around, Darlington. So we'd like to understand to what extent did the COVID-19 pandemic affect Liberia's economy? How badly was the business economy hit by the pandemic?
Well, so the COVID-19. So let's go back a bit to 2019. That the economy contracted by around 2.5%. 2020, as a result of the COVID, the economy further contracted by 3%. Every facet of the economy, the real sector of the economy, was affected as well, because the government had to shut down the economy because of the effect of the coronavirus. So yes, as it was with other developing countries and the world at large, Liberia's economy was also badly hit by the coronavirus. And so, like I indicated, it had a contraction of around 3% in GDP as a direct result of the COVID pandemic.
The Liberia Revenue Authority, known fully well that COVID-19 had a debilitating effect on the economy of Liberia, did what other countries did and tried to cushion the effect of the pandemic on the citizens. So what were the measures that the Revenue Authority put in place to help the citizens manage and scale through the pandemic?
The first thing we did, we massively scaled down our workforce. We had to, as a result of the health alert by our Minister of Health, we had to massively scale down our workforce. And so we had a skeleton staff running the institution. We also put in place, and then we were on the path of digitizing most of our tax processes and procedures. So as a consequence, we introduced e-filing of tax return, e-payment of taxes, where taxpayers could sit at their convenience of their homes and business premises to pay the taxes, directly debiting their bank accounts and crediting the general account of government. We also introduced the electronic issuance of tax clearance certificate because it was a means, even though businesses were partially shut down, but in order to receive payments from government and other vendors, you had to have the tax clearance certificate. So we automated the process of applying for and issuing tax clearance certificate. On our Customs International Tax App, we automated the process of lodging all of the application for for duties. And so as a result of these automated measures, we were able to be more resilient amidst the challenges of the COVID-19. And to a large extent, we're able to stabilize the revenue collection during those challenging times. What we did not do, as other revenue administrations did, and as other government did, we did not give tax breaks. We did not give waivers of taxes to sectors or institutions. The government, as a result of low resources available to the government at the time, it could not afford to give these tax breaks. So rather, it kind of made it streamline most of the bureaucracies for tax payment and tax filing, and ensure that taxpayers remain at the convenience of their homes and their offices to file and pay their taxes. So those were some of the measures that were instituted by the LRA in conjunction with other stakeholders of government to ensure that revenue collection, revenue administration during the period of the pandemic was stabilized.
So you've made us understand, Darlington, that the COVID-19 pandemic was an eye-opener for the authority to embrace technology and automate most of its services. But then we had also want to look at, before COVID-19 came into place, how effective was Liberia's tax system and its laws and revenue collection before COVID-19 happened? Was the authority able to have a large tax net to accommodate as many individuals and corporate entities in terms of tax collection before the COVID-19 came into place? How would you describe it before then?
Pre-COVID-19 saw a gradual growth in terms of the expansion of the tax base, in terms of the growth of the revenue. We were growing the tax base at a rate of 5% pre-COVID-19. That trajectory continued even after COVID-19. For the last 5 years, since the incumbency of the Revenue Authority, revenue has grown by the rate of 7% every year. So since the fiscal year 2017, up to 2021, which was last fiscal year, revenue has grown, by 7%. So pre-COVID-19, our tax base was growing, like I said, around 5% as a result of those measures that were being introduced by the Revenue Authority. So we were basically between automation and manual processes. But the roadmap was set in our domestic resource mobilization strategy, which was developed and published in 2018 by the government of Liberia. That set the pace, right, for the growth and expansion of the tax base by the Revenue Authority, because that document identified sectors that the Revenue Authority is focusing on right now for growth, mainly the manufacturing sector, the agricultural sector, the telecommunication sector. So that document set a clear roadmap that enabled the LRA pre-COVID-19 to know exactly what it wanted to do, how it intended to expand the tax base, the growth at which it wanted to achieve, and it did. So like I said, it was growing at the rate of 5% pre-COVID, and that progress continued even after 2020, which was the pandemic year.
All right. I know that Liberia is a member of the West African Tax Administration Forum, and we know that the forum has a mandate, which is to help West African countries generate as much funds as it can, or as these member countries can, to actually fund their governments and to get through the expenditure. So can you just take us through your experiences as regards how the forum has helped Liberia generate revenue?
Right. The forum is the regional body that helps to strengthen regional cooperation between tax administrations. Particularly, the forum has helped us to build capacities over the years. So the capacity specifically in the telecom sector, capacity specifically in the mining sector, because Liberia, our revenue, about 45% of domestic revenue comes from the mining sector. So the forum has helped us to build capacity in leveraging some of the experiences we already had, particularly with our audit program. So we were afforded opportunities to attend a couple of trainings that were conducted by the forum to strengthen our capacity in those areas. So as a result of that, we now are able to even generate more revenue from the mining sector. We are now able to generate even more revenue from the telecom sector. I can say to you, as a result of some of these interventions, our auditors were able to audit some of these hard tech industry in the telecom sector, and we generated substantial revenue. And taxpayers' behavior has changed as a result of those interventions. So yes, the regional cooperation has been very instrumental, very critical, very timely in aiding us to enhance our capacities, in aiding us to be more stronger, to generate revenue more smarter. Because nowadays, moving away from the manual process to the automated process, it takes time, and both institutional and personal capacities need to be enhanced, need to be built. And that's exactly what the forum has been doing. They have been exposing us to automation. They have been exposing us to computer-assisted audit techniques that our auditors are currently using to expand our audit program, expand the tax base, and grow the revenue. And for that, we are grateful to the forum. And we continue on the level of cooperation, we continue on the level of partnership over the years, and we are seeing results thus far. And we'll continue to receive results as a result of these interventions by the forum.
It's quite nice to see that we have a forum that is using homegrown solutions to actually solve Africa's problem. But then I'd like us to just scale out a bit and see, are there other countries where you feel the strategies that they've employed over time in terms of generating funds from tax collection has helped them revamp the economy, that you feel that Africa can also adopt and assimilate and replicate that in Africa to further scale up conversations around tax collection and revenue generation?
Yes, I think Africa is on the path already, but I think we can also learn from them in the areas of automation. Right now, we believe that automating the tax processes and procedures, automating how revenue is being generated, how taxes are being filed, how taxes are being paid, how audits are being conducted, audit investigation are being conducted by the Revenue Authority. That these advanced and mature tax administrations, particularly in Europe, and in the United States, I think we can adopt that, moving away from the manual process. Because over the years, what experience have taught me is that automating and removing, to a large extent, human intervention from the tax processes, ensure that transparency comes on board, ensure that there are less collusion between the tax officer and the taxpayer, ensure that the revenue basket is expanded, ensure that government has more revenue at its disposal in a fiscal space to provide more public good to its people. So I think Africa, particularly countries that are developing, emerging in Africa, should move more to automating its tax processes and procedures, bringing more convenience to the taxpayer. By that, we will ensure that transparency, is enhanced, and that more revenue is made available to the individual governments. We also like to highlight the level of cooperation between regional bodies and tax administrations across Africa, especially as we exchange information for tax purposes. We believe that the issue of tax evasion, the issue of tax avoidance, the issue of tax fraud, the issue of tax crime will further be we will further combat it will further win the war against these vices once we enhance the level of cooperation between regional bodies like WATAF, ATAF, and between tax administrations as a whole in Africa. So if you look at what the Europeans are doing, most times in Europe, the EU, the OECD issue these directives, and the level of cooperation between tax administrations in these countries are seen. So I think in addition to what I've just said, I think we need to strengthen, in addition to automation. One other area that developing countries should look at is the area of fostering more our partnership, fostering more our cooperation amongst ourselves, exchanging information more amongst ourselves that will lead to the fight against these crimes and more revenue to the government.
All right, finally, Darlington, before I let you go, what is your projection as regards Liberia's economy with the revenue that is to be generated from the LRA? Because we are looking at the process whereby businesses would find dividends, or even citizens will also reap dividends for their civic obligation that is being rendered to government. And of course, you also want to look at the issue of trust, accountability, and transparency. So what do you think Liberian citizens should hope for in terms of that and, of course, the economy?
Well, I think the LRA is on the right path. The government has been really supporting the institution in terms of the provision of resources to provide and to generate more revenue. So the citizens should look ahead to more revenue, more partnership on the LRA that will lead to more revenue being generated. That will expand the fiscal space for government to provide more public services. Currently, what the revenue has been doing over the years, like I said, we have been growing the revenue by about 7% over these years. So government has been able to build more roads, provide and inject more revenue into the agricultural sector, inject more revenue into our electrical grid. That right now, to some extent, electricity is stabilized in the country, has been able to inject some money in the wholesale and retail sector, in the manufacturing sector, that are seeing gradual growth in these sectors, all as a result of some of the interventions and revenue being generated by the LRA. So the citizens should look forward, and also the LRA looks forward to more cooperation, more partnership from the citizens, because it is because of these partnerships and cooperations that will lead us to grow the revenue, expand the tax base, and enable the government to have they need a fiscal space to provide the public good to its citizens. And those are the words of encouragement I want to leave with our citizens here, that hey, together we can do more. Together we can build our country and see it as we all want to see it. Grow it as we all want to grow it. Expand it as we all want to expand it.
Thank you so much, Darlington, for joining our conversation. Really appreciate that. And it's also nice to know that the Georgia administration is doing as much as it can to support the LRA to see how it can improve on its revenue generation, because it's very important when it comes to money being generated that government can use to better the lives of its citizens. So we appreciate what you're doing. Let's keep it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In 2020, Liberia exceeded its tax revenue target, collecting over $500 million US. And now Liberia's experience highlights the potential for taxation to drive economic growth and recovery in African countries if that can be replicated. It's important to know that it's all about building strong, transparent tax systems that countries can generate the revenue that they need to invest in critical public services and, of course, create opportunities for their citizens. And we hope that African countries will take a cue from that so as to quickly or accelerate the revamping of the continent's economy. Now, that is where we just end today's edition of Business Edge. We thank you so much for being part of it. And we also want you to know that you can visit our social media platforms at New Central TV. Head on to our website, www.newcentral.africa, and download our mobile app on App Store and Play Store. My name is Lekon Obanjo. See you some other time.